Hi, welcome to Mama's Natural. I'm your host, Rusty Red. It's been about 6 or 7 weeks since my last video. I haven't really had the energy or the focus to be able to make any videos for a while. After my last video, my grandma, our matriarch of our family, had passed away. About that same time, of course, with my last few videos, you know that my husband had been on a really difficult schedule for us. And it was kind of hard adjusting for my family. My son was dealing with a lot of emotional meltdowns. I was struggling with the change as well. And about that same time, Gabby started teething, which, of course, teething babies, never a fun thing. And to top all that off, I had a tooth that broke. Apparently, while I was pregnant with Gabby, I had a cavity start up under the gum line, I guess, or it was something that x-rays would have caught, but I didn't really understand the importance behind x-rays. I'm just like, okay, so you know what my structure, it was a thing. So getting x-rays on your teeth regularly is important, especially while you're pregnant and nursing, because I guess I was stupid about it, and so now I'm paying the consequences. But because the tooth broke, it did partially expose a nerve. And for those of you who have never experienced that, that is not fun. Nerves, especially it seems like on the upper teeth, it just sends shooting pains all up your head. And your nerves in your mouth, I mean, they're so closely linked in your brain that it is the first time I have actually experienced mind-numbing pain. And it wasn't because the level of pain was that bad. It was just the constant, and it being so, like I said, being so close to the brain that it's so hard to think about anything else. And so, and then also my parents, who live right next door to us, had just gone on vacation before my grandma died. So pretty much my support system is my husband and my parents. And my husband, because of his hours he was working, I didn't have him in the evenings to kind of just unload my day, and I didn't have my mom around to help with that either. So it's been a rough several weeks, and once everything kind of wound down, it's still taken several weeks just recouping and trying to get back up to operation standard. So because of all this, it's what's inspired today's video. And today's video is addressing surviving loss with children. I've had people die in my life before, but when you have children, it's like there's this whole different dynamic that gets thrown in, and it's like, how do you deal with that, you know? So death is a very sad reality of life, and without exception, it is painful. It's emotionally taxing and extremely exhausting. All the emotions that are going on it's just overwhelming. Sometimes loss will directly affect our children. In the case of, let's say, if my mom were to die, my kids and my son is very much old enough to know my grandma or his grandma and feel that loss. In this case, neither of the kids are really old enough or spent enough time around my grandma to really, I think, understand or feel the loss of that. My son still thinks that Gigi is at her house. So it's not a case where he's directly feeling the loss. But no matter what's going on, whether it's just your children feeling the loss through one of their friends maybe passed away from school or daycare, just you dealing with a loss from your own friend or family member that the kids don't really know, or the both of you are experiencing the loss directly, it doesn't matter. It always affects your children in some way, shape, or form. And it's important to know how to work with your children and teach them how to cope through loss. After my mom had passed, my mom's mom, my mind's just not even able to focus even today, but after my mom's mom passed away, and I think that was 20 years ago or 21 years ago, something like that, my dad's mom became the only matriarch of the family that was left. And she, so all of our family events were no longer split between my mom's mom and my dad's mom. Everything has been pretty much, my dad's mom has hosted everything that our whole family has gone to. And so losing her was very, very detrimental for our family. And it was a very sudden loss. She had an aneurysm. It was very unexpected. And by the end of she hemorrhaged in the brain. And so, short story, she obviously passed away fairly quickly. Fortunate thing, she didn't feel any pain. It's not like she was suffering for a long time, but the sudden way that she went was very shocking for our family. And then, of course, who she was and how she affected our family was a huge hit to our whole family. And though loss is not something that we can avoid at all, I mean, loss is going to hit us at some point, either expectedly or unexpectedly. It's just, death is part of life. But what we can control is how we cope and how we teach our children to cope. And the first thing to remember is this is going to hurt. No matter what you do, there's going to be pain and there's going to be grieving. And that's important for recovering from a loss. So trying to make it so it doesn't hurt is unrealistic. We've got to be realistic with everything we do with us and our children, so we don't try to create unrealistic concepts that the kids are going to try to achieve later in life that they can't. So first of all, as much as you can, obviously when you have a sudden loss, and depending on how close this person is to you, you can't always be 100% in control of how you respond right away. But as much as possible, if you can keep the worst of your meltdown, if it's, someone that you've lost, keep the worst of your meltdown to during private time in your bedroom. There is absolutely nothing wrong with your children seeing you cry. In fact, it's healthy, and your children need to know that it's a very healthy thing to cry. But there's a difference between crying in front of your children and you melting down. And instinctually, children seeing a caregiver struggling is going to create lack of security for your children. It's going to create... It's just gonna create instability. So you want to keep the worst of it to your own room, and if you can, try to bottle it up temporarily, as much as you can. Let some tears fall if you need to, but like for me with my grandma, I didn't really cry at all, but that's not my personality. If I was someone who had hysterically cries when I lose someone, I would have had to have done the best I could. And if you can't help it, then you can't help it. It just is what it is. But if you can, try to get to a quiet place, see if you can get someone to watch the kids, or put on a TV show and go into the deepest, darkest room of the house where they hopefully can't hear you, and you just let it go. Scream if you need to into a pillow or whatever. The more together that we can be in front of our children, the better, without looking like we aren't being affected. Children need a constant stability from their parents. And if we appear overly unstable through a major meltdown, then that creates an extreme insecurity, and it can be very traumatic for our children, because instinctually their caregiver is incapable of caring for them, is what their subconscious is going to do. So with children, the number one rule is to make them feel safe, secure, and especially through scary changes. So the question is, how do we do that? How do we create security for our children when we might be feeling insecure? So first off, though change is going to be unavoidable, for whatever reason, there is going to be some change in your family's dynamic because of loss. For us, I just couldn't seem to focus on getting anything done around the house. It's funny because though visually to look at me, if you were to just watch and watch a check mark list of what I was getting done for the day, it wasn't off by that much, but it was my energy was shot. To look back, I can see that the kids would have easily been able to, did easily see that my confidence was gone, my motivation was gone. I was not as I was not as in charge of what I needed to do. I was not owning my day the way I used to. So there was very much change happening for our family. But even if there is change going, try your best to keep some key components in your pre-loss daily routine there. For example, if you have a really strong wake-up routine and you get up at this time and there's this happens, you guys sit down and talk, or you have a morning worship, and then you have a really good strong nap time routine, and then you have a good strong bedtime routine that you guys usually would do. Try to keep those three components. If chaos is going on between all of those and your schedule is shot and gone, it's still going to affect your children in some way. But at very least, your children have three key points throughout their day that is the same, that they can go, okay, this is all going on, and the first day's rough, but we still had this happen today, we still had this happen today, and these, they're very strong, I want to call them pillars to your day. Pick out 3 pillars of your day that your kids, that you feel that would be the most impactful for your children to keep the same, and do whatever you have to do to keep those the same. Next, talk to them about it. For my daughter, she's way too young to understand even what I'm saying, but by talking to her and listening to myself talk, it helps me work through what's going on, as well as you can, as you talk, you'll be able to hear your voice start to, you'll crack and you'll start crying during it, I'm absolutely sure, but you'll notice that your tone starts to become more soothing to yourself as well as to your children. My son, though he understands a lot of words, the concept of death and not coming back doesn't understand. He seems to think that you can just plug grandma in like a battery and recharge her, because we talk about the batteries to his toys dying all the time, and that, we just need to put a new battery in, or we need to plug it in and charge it. So he's struggling with grasping the idea that she is absolutely gone. But talking to them is very important. Talking to him about it in a calm thing, explaining what's happened, why it's happened, why you are acting different, and why, if you're crying or going through the steps of grief, why those steps are important and what they're doing for you, and talk to them, reassure them things are still okay. Things will be fine. We're going to be all right. And it's not going to be like this forever. And then spend extra time with your kids. I think the first 2 days after my grandma died, all house chores except for cooking. I mean, I didn't even do dishes. I didn't do laundry. I didn't pick up toys. I didn't make my bed. I barely even I was lucky to get dressed those 2 days. And I spent most of the day just playing with the kids, because they were kind of getting a little bit panicky at first, wondering why I was acting so different. And it was stuff that I didn't think that I was putting off, but they were picking up on it, and they were being very clamory. So instead of just like walking around holding Gabby on my hip, or just sitting there with my son clamoring at me, I sat down and I got into playing with my kids on the floor. And it actually was helpful in distracting me until my husband could get home, or until the kids went to bed, so I could just cope and deal with it and decompress. And not only does spending that time with your children help them, because it's giving them a stability, it's, okay, mom's right here. Mom's not mentally zoned out on us. Because that's what you tend to do when there's loss, is you are so up here trying to deal with everything, and sometimes you just need to put the processing on hold and to the side, and take care of your children, deal with what you need to deal with, and get to a safe, secure place where you can bring this back to this, and then tune out and just process what's going on. What does this loss mean for me, and is this person really gone? But when we have the children there, we kind of have to try to compartmentalize that a little bit, and as best we can. And then too, by being there for the kids, it helps us be distracted. I have a lot of happy times playing with my children. It's fun to watch my children light up when we build the tallest tower out of bricks or blocks, or I play baking with my daughter, and those kinds of things are very important and helpful for both of you in just coping with everything. So kind of just to run back through some of these, remembering that change is unavoidable, but try to keep 3 pillars of your day that are most impactful to your children, the same. Be okay letting some of the stuff go around the house. If your house looks like a disaster by the end of day 1, that's okay. This is all about you and your children coping and grieving. Spend some extra time on the floor with your children. If you have older children, this might be sitting down and having them teach you how to play one of their video games, or paint your daughter's fingernails, or do their hair, or teach them how to do makeup. That would be something that would be very fun for the kids. It would give them a high point. It'd give you a high point. And talk to them about it. Explain what's going on, what you're feeling, some of what you're thinking, and let them know this isn't going to be like this forever. It's going to get better. Now, if you are the only one experiencing a loss, meaning you as the adults, and the children are not directly feeling a loss, such as in this particular case, the important thing, in addition to everything we've already kind of talked about, try to let your children observe the basics of coping. So, if you're having to take a time out to just sit and deep breathe, let them be a part of that. Have them deep breathe with you. As you're breathing, talk to yourself. I need to do 6 seconds in through the nose and 6 seconds out through the mouth, and have your child do it with you. If you're needing to cry, then just sit and cry and let them know mommy's okay. This is part of mommy's reset. This is just like deep breathing. This is mommy resetting. You can sit here and hold my hand, or just some of the basics. If you need to take on a project to deal with it, or talk yourself through it, let them be a part of some of the basics of coping, because that's how they're going to learn, is by watching you for the most part. Again, we want to keep the most explosive part of your meltdown where you are the most insecure and the most unstable. So your kids are not having to watch that, because they need you to at least appear somewhat stable to them. Now, if your child is the only one experiencing the loss, such as a friend of theirs that died, in addition to what we've already discussed, let them do most of the talking. A lot of times when someone experiences a loss, we want to come in and we want to say something to make it feel better. And a lot of times they don't need some big glamour phrase that came out of a TV show that fixed the moment. Sometimes what they need is you to just sit with them. If your daughter's just not wanting to talk, just sit with her. You don't even have to, it depends on your relationship with your child. Sometimes they don't even want to be touched, and that's okay. Just sit there. Let them know with your presence that I'm here. I'm there for you. And if they want to talk, let them talk. If they want to get into gory details about something, let them. That's how they need to process and cope. And just let them know this is not going to last forever. This is temporary. This feeling, this hurt that you're feeling is not going to last forever. And then let them feel the pain. Let them feel it. This is important. This is how our bodies cope. Now, if you both are experiencing directly the loss, such as, for example, if my mom were to pass away and my children are old enough that they very much know her, then this is a case where it's going to be a combination of the two previous situations, where you do some talking about what you're feeling, what you're thinking, how you're coping, and then you give them their turn to express and talk about what they're feeling, what they're thinking about with the loss. How are you feeling with grandma being gone? Do you understand what this is meaning? And so on and so forth. And try to distract yourself with some activities with each other. Get down and play a board game, play with some Legos. Whoa! Play with some things. Do some stuff to distract you and them. Now, if your child handles loss by suddenly becoming aggressive, even if your child wasn't the one directly affected by the loss, such as what we had here, Asher became very aggressive with his autism. His stress outlet is aggression. And some kids, even without autism, will have, they just outlet, maybe differently. Each one. One might melt down and cry. The other one might become very highly aggressive. Don't try to squash their outlet. What you can do is you can guide it and mold it into a more appropriate and safer outlet. So for our son, he all of a sudden started screaming, hitting and kicking and getting very violent with us and his sister. And so, you know, find something that they can do those things on that will still let them have the outlet. You know, put a pillow to your chest and let them hit and scream and kick at it all they want. If your husband has a punching bag and he's into working out and boxing and all that kind of stuff, have your husband involve your child in an outlet in that way, shape, or form. So the goal basically is to be open to what your child's outlet needs are. If they need to just sit down and cry, if they need to talk, if they need to be aggressive with something. And for those of you with boys, sometimes boys need to just have a good wrestling match, something that physically lets them just an outlet. And for my son, we had to do some wrestling matches a little bit each day to help him with that. And my husband tried to wrestle with him when he was home. And it just depends on your child and what they're going to need. Be open to it and try to help them make it an appropriate outlet. So, like I said, you don't want to stop them altogether. Just find a way for that same outlet to be safe and appropriate. Now, if your child does not seem to be outletting, but you know that they've been affected by the loss, and they just seem to be bottling it up, seek a grief counselor immediately. Unresolved emotions and loss and grief can be very damaging to your child in the long run. So getting some sort of help, whether it be they go to that grief counselor or you get advice from the grief counselor, is very important. And then at the end of the day, dealing with loss is basically just letting yourself let things go. Letting yourself grieve in appropriate places and in appropriate ways. And helping your kids learn to cope as well. Excuse me. Sorry, my throat's getting dry. Now, for any of you that are watching this that are currently dealing with loss, that may be why you have come across this video, my heart really reaches out for you. We're still kind of reeling from the loss of my grandma, and it's still been very emotional for the rest of us as well. My grandpa is still alive, so we're trying to be there for him as well. And there's a lot of unknown of what's going to be happening kind of with the family going forward. Who's going to be hosting this, who's going to be doing that, and some of the family has yet to come home from vacations that they were on and try to work through this. It's not an easy thing, and we have to be open to each different family member dealing with things in their own way, especially with children being involved. It's a difficult process to go through, and it takes a lot of time, and you just got to kind of let things go through course and take time. And if at any point you feel that you are really not able to cope with anything, you seek a grief counselor for yourself, because your children need you to be able to basic level cope. So like and subscribe, and in the comments below, if you are or have gone through loss with children, have you done any of the things that I've mentioned above? How have they worked for you? And if there's anything I haven't mentioned that you found works really well with helping your child cope, please put it in the comments below so that anybody watching this video can read some other advice that may be out there and hopefully be able to work with their children, because we're all in this together. Have a great day, and see you in the next video.